even cook well. What is wrong with you? What is this rubbish? You are a terrible daughter-in-law. You can't even do anything right.
The slap did not land on my face. It landed on my soul. I was standing at the stove that Saturday morning, stirring a pot of egusi soup I had started before the sun came up. My back was already aching. My feet were already swollen inside my house slippers. I had been awake since 4:30, sweeping the compound in the dark, fetching water from the street tap because the overhead tank was low, washing last night's dishes, and now cooking. All before most people in that house had even opened their eyes. I thought I was doing well that morning. I genuinely thought so. Then Mama Adaeze walked into the kitchen. She did not say good morning. She never said good morning to me. She walked straight to the pot, lifted the lid, dipped a spoon inside, tasted it, and in one sharp, deliberate motion, slapped the spoon out of my hand. It hit the wall. Egusi soup splattered across the white tiles I had mopped at 5 a.m. Is this what you call food? Her voice was loud, designed to be loud. 3 of her friends were sitting in the parlor, and she wanted every one of them to hear. Are you trying to kill this family with salt? Is that your plan for us? I stood there with my hands still raised from where I had been holding the spoon. My heart was hammering. My throat was tight. I could feel the attention of her visitors turning toward the kitchen doorway. That particular silence that means people are pretending not to listen while listening with everything they have. I had used 2 pinches of salt, the exact same amount she had shown me herself 3 weeks earlier, standing in that same kitchen, her hand guiding mine over that same pot. 2 pinches. I remembered because I had been so careful. I was always so careful. Adam, her voice cracked through the house like a whip. Adam, come and see what this wife of yours is doing to this family. His footsteps came slowly, the footsteps of a man who already knew what he was walking into and had decided in advance what he would and would not do about it. He appeared in the doorway, white singlet, rumpled trousers, eyes that moved from his mother to the visitors to me and then dropped to the floor. Mama, what happened? What happened? Look at this soup. Taste it. Your wife is trying to poison us with salt. I kept my voice steady. I used the same amount you showed me, Mama. 2 pinches. Don't answer me back. Her finger shot toward my face. Don't open that mouth at me in front of my visitors. I turned to Adam, my husband, the man who had sat across from me at my cousin's wedding and talked to me for 4 straight hours, telling me I was his peace, his home, the answer to a prayer. I looked at him with everything I had, my exhaustion, my humiliation, the desperate need for one single word in my defense. He looked at his mother. Then he looked at the floor. Jessica, just fix the soup, add water, balance the salt. He walked back down the hallway. The bedroom door clicked shut. I turned back to the stove. I picked up another spoon. My hands were shaking, but I held them still through willpower alone. I stared. I always stared. That was the thing nobody understood about me. I was not a weak woman. I was a woman who had made a decision to love and to try, and I was holding on to that decision with both hands as the edges cut into my palms. I had been raised to believe that patience was a form of strength, that a good heart always found its reward. I did not yet know how much that belief was going to cost me. I learned that house the way you learn a place you are afraid of. Every corner had a rule. Every hour had an expectation, and none of it was ever written down because the whole point was that I could always be wrong no matter what I did. Mama Adaeze woke at 6. Tea had to be on the table by 6:15. Not 6:10 because then it would be too cool. Not 6:20 because then I was lazy. 6:15 exactly, with the color a precise shade of brown I had studied and memorized like a student preparing for the only exam that mattered. Monday and Thursday were visiting days. Her friends would arrive in the afternoon, and those were the days I scrubbed the parlor floor until my knees ached and the tiles reflected light like still water. She would walk her visitors through the house like an inspector, pointing at surfaces, lifting cushions, running a finger along window ledges. If she found one smudge,
one corner with dust, one shelf I had missed. She would call me in front of everyone and make me redo it while they watched. I cooked every meal, washed every cloth, swept the compound every morning and every evening, ironed school uniforms for Adam's younger siblings who had come to stay, fetched water when the tank ran low, did all of it without being asked because I had learned that waiting to be asked was also a crime. And still, it was never enough. The first time I called my mother from behind the generator shed, I was whispering so no one inside could hear me. Mama, it's getting worse. Endure, my daughter. She will soften with time. She hit me with a cooking stick last week. Silence on the line. The kind of silence that is not empty but full of things a mother knows and cannot say. Then, did Adam see it? I leaned against the cold concrete wall of the shed. The evening sky above me was going dark, that bruised purple that comes just before full night. A mosquito hummed near my ear. The smell of that day's cooking was still in my wrapper, in my hair, in my skin. Adam said I should respect his mother. My mother sighed, long and heavy, carrying the weight of a whole generation of women who had endured things they should not have had to endure. Jessica, a man who will not stand between his wife and his mother. I love him, Mama. I know you do, my daughter. He's not a bad man. He's just... I searched for the word, the honest word. He is afraid of her. Yes, she said quietly, and you are the one paying for his fear. That conversation lived inside me for weeks. I carried it while washing clothes at the outdoor tap, my knuckles raw and punk from the cold water. I carried it while cooking, while sweeping, while lying still at night listening to the sounds of a house that never fully rested. The cooking stick incident had happened on a Tuesday. Mama Adaize's younger sister had come from the village, and I had cooked jollof rice, fried plantain, and chicken stew. The rice was perfect, the deep orange-red color, the kind that makes people close their eyes on the first spoon. I had tasted it 3 times to be sure. I brought the food to the table. She lifted the lid, sniffed, and announced to her sister, "You see what I deal with every day? This girl cannot cook." "Mama, the food!" The stick cut me across the forearm. It knocked me back against the counter, stinging, sharp, deliberate. The room went still. Her sister looked at her plate, said nothing. From the parlor, a TV laugh track played on. Adam did not come. I set the serving spoon down on the table very carefully, walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and pressed my arm to my chest and breathed. In, out, until the shaking stopped. That night, Adam came to bed and found me facing the wall. "Jessica?" Silence. She didn't mean it like that. I turned over. I looked at this man I had chosen, this face I still loved even as it kept failing me, and I said the most honest thing I had said in months. "Adam, she hit me." Long silence. "I'll talk to her," he said. He never did. I kept waiting. I kept trying. I kept waking before dawn and stirring pots and scrubbing floors and telling myself that patience was strength. But something inside me was changing. Something soft and hopeful was quietly, steadily hardening into something else. If this story is hitting something real in your chest right now, stay with me. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Because what happens next, I need you to see it. Mama Adaize announced the family gathering 3 weeks in advance. First Saturday of December, the whole extended family, cousins, aunties, uncles, in-laws, old friends. She announced it at breakfast like a queen planning a celebration, listing the dishes she wanted, the number of chairs, the decoration of the compound. She looked at me once. That one look communicated a full paragraph. "You will cook all of this, every pot, every dish, and it will be perfect. And if it is not, you will stand in front of every person in this family and be made an example of." I started cooking the day before. Pepper soup, jollof rice, white rice, egusi soup, vegetable soup, fried chicken, goat meat stew, moi moi, puff puff for the children. I was on my feet for 9 hours on Friday and up again at 5 on Saturday morning to continue, my back on fire, my feet swollen, my eyes stinging from smoke and pepper and exhaustion. The relatives arrived in waves. Aunties kissed my cheek and said I looked well. Uncles told Adam he had a hard-working wife. I smiled. I served. I refilled plates. I went back to the kitchen. By 3 in the afternoon, 40 people were eating and the compound was full of music and laughter. I finally sat down at the kitchen entrance with my own plate of rice. Just to breathe. Just for one moment. I was tired, but I was also, for one small, fragile second, at peace. That was when she came. Mama Adeze walked through the kitchen door with 2 senior aunties behind her, and I saw her face, and my stomach dropped completely through the floor. She turned toward the nearest group of relatives. Everybody, let me tell you what this girl has done today. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. I specifically told her to set aside goat meat for the elders, the oldest people in this family. And what did she do? She gave everything to the young people. There is nothing left, no respect, no home training. This is what I live with every single day. I set my plate down. I stood up. Everything in me was trembling, not from fear, from something heavier and older than fear, the shaking of a person who has absorbed too much for too long and has finally reached the absolute edge of what a human being can carry. Because she was lying. I had separated the goat meat at 6 that morning, set it in a covered pot on the back counter, done it carefully, done it first, because I understood what it meant to honor elders, because I had been raised right, no matter what this woman told people about me daily. Mama? My voice came out quiet and steady, walking carefully over thin ice. The meat is in the covered pot on the back counter. I set it aside this morning. Anyone can go and check right now. The compound went absolutely silent. She turned to me slowly, and her eyes said what her mouth was about to say louder. Are you calling me a liar in front of my family? I am saying the meat is there. That is all I am saying. Adam! Her voice broke across the compound. Adam, come and control your wife. Adam walked over from the men's section. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He looked at the 40 relatives watching. His jaw tightened. And then he said the words that destroyed us. Jessica, whatever happened, just apologize to your mother. We will sort it out privately. The world stopped moving. I looked at my husband. This man, this face, this choice I had made and defended and bled for. And something that had been bending for 8 long months, bending, finally broke clean in half. I took off my apron. I set it on the nearest chair. I walked into the house and I began to pack. I did not take much. 1 bag, this small blue one I had brought from my parents' house on my wedding day. The one that had been sitting at the top of the wardrobe like it had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. 2 wrappers, my toiletries, my documents, birth certificates, school certificates, my phone and its charger, the small photo frame of my mother from the bedside table. I left my wedding photo on the wall. I left the gold earrings from the introduction ceremony. I left the expensive perfume, the good dresses, everything that had come with the life I was now folding up and walking away from. The noise from the gathering drifted in through the bedroom window. Music, laughter, children chasing each other across the compound. None of them knew. None of them knew that the woman who had cooked all that food, who had been on her feet since 5 in the morning, who had smiled and served and swallowed herself piece by piece all day, was in the bedroom, quietly, permanently, living. I zipped the bag. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, not crying, just sitting, feeling the full weight of what I was doing settle into my body like water finding its level. I thought about the girl who had walked into this house 8 months ago, carrying so much love and so much hope. I thought about every morning before dawn, every pot, every flaw, every slap I had absorbed and excused and explained away to myself in the dark. I thought about Adam's face when he told me to apologize. Not guilt, not shame, just convenience. My pain was inconvenient. My dignity was inconvenient. Choosing me over his mother's performance was inconvenient. I picked up my bag. I walked out of that bedroom for the last time. Through the hallway that still smelled of my cooking. Through the kitchen where the soup pot was still warm. Out the back gate that led to the street. The evening air hit my face, cool and real and indifferent to everything I was feeling. I called my cousin Blessing. She picked up on the second ring. "I'm coming now," she said, and opening the gate. That night, I slept on a mattress on the floor of Blessing's spare room, my small bag beside me, the city breathing outside the window. And I felt, for the first time in 8 months, safe. Not happy, not healed, not at peace yet, but safe. And safe was enough for that night. What I did not know lying there on that mattress was what was already beginning to unfold in the house I had left. What I did not know was the kind of harvest that was coming for the woman who had planted so much cruelty in her own home. 6 months later, I was living in a one-room apartment near my workplace, and my life had become quietly and steadily my own. I had painted the wall above my bed terracotta, a warm, earthy red I had always loved, and nobody had ever thought to ask me about. I had a small gas stove and good pots, and I cooked what I wanted, when I wanted. The food tasted different when you made it for yourself. It tasted like freedom, like the first deep breath after months underwater. Blessing and I had started a small catering business. Weekend events, office lunches, birthday celebrations. The same hands that had been told were useless were now earning me income and compliments from people who ate my food and asked for my contact. I was building something real, something mine. I was healing. And then the news started coming. It came slowly at first, the way a flood starts, just a trickle, almost nothing. And then suddenly it is everywhere. Adam had remarried. Her name was Vivian from Lagos. Bold, sharp, the kind of woman who walks into a room and immediately becomes the most present person in it. I heard Mama Adaize had been thrilled at the introduction. Well-dressed, beautiful, from a good family. She had rubbed her hands together thinking she had finally gotten what she wanted. A daughter-in-law she could shape and own. She had never been more wrong about anything in her entire life. The first story reached me through Sandra, Adam's cousin, who had witnessed that terrible gathering and had watched me leave without saying a word to stop me. She called on a Sunday evening, and I could hear her trying to keep her voice neutral and failing completely. "Jessica, are you sitting down? Tell me." Vivian told Mama Adaize that her jollof rice tasted like food prepared for a burial ceremony. I sat very still. She said, "What?" In front of Adam, in front of 2 of the older aunties who had come to visit, she said, and I am quoting directly, "I have eaten better food at funerals." Then she pushed the plate aside and went to the bedroom. Mama Adaize, the woman who had terrorized me for 8 months over a grain of extra salt, had stood in her own kitchen in front of witnesses and been told her cooking tasted like death.
But that was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, Sandra called again. Mama Adaize had done what she always did during arguments, raised her hand. That slow, threatening lift of the palm that had sent me stumbling backward more times than I could count. The gesture that said, I can touch you whenever I want, and no one in this house will stop me. Vivian had caught her wrist in mid-air, just grabbed it, held it there, suspended between them. And then, in a voice so flat and calm, it was more frightening than shouting, she had said, if this hand comes near my body one more time, I will make sure you cannot lift it again. I am not the woman you had before. Try me and see. Mama Adaize had gone silent for 3 full days after that, would not come out of her room, stopped receiving visitors. Her pride had been grabbed by the wrist and held in the air in her own house by a woman who did not flinch, and something in her had cracked from the shock of it. But even that was not the worst of what was coming for her, because Vivian was not just bold, Vivian was strategic. She stopped cooking for Mama Adaize entirely, prepared food for herself and Adam, and occasionally left a covered pot on the counter. But there was no longer a daughter-in-law waking before dawn to ensure the older woman's breakfast was ready at 6:15. There was no one scrubbing floors for her visiting days, no one washing her personal clothes by hand, no one absorbing her moods with silence and a bowed head. When Mama Adaize complained to Adam, Vivian would walk into the room mid-sentence and say calmly, if you have something to say about me, say it in front of me. I do not do conversations held behind my back. When the older woman tried her old trick of gathering visitors to witness a performance, raising her voice, making accusations, turning private conflict into public spectacle, Vivian would sit down, cross her legs, and begin to list, quietly and precisely, every incident she had been storing in her memory. Dates, words, witnesses. She kept records the way a lawyer keeps records, and she deployed them with the patience of someone who had been waiting for exactly the right moment. The visitors stopped enjoying the performances because now there were 2 sides presenting evidence, and Vivian's evidence was detailed, calm, and devastating. The house became a place of permanent war. Adam, the man who chose silence as his strategy for managing his mother, was now drowning in the consequences of that silence. There was no longer anyone absorbing the chaos quietly. Every spark became a fire. Every small conflict became a confrontation that lasted days. He came home from work to raised voices and slammed doors, and a mother who wept in her room, and a wife who sat in the parlor watching television with the volume turned up. He believed that his problems were the woman he married. He was discovering, slowly and painfully, that his problems had always lived in that house long before I arrived. Then came the moment that ended everything. 3 months into the marriage, during one of their worst arguments, Vivian had packed her own bag, not quietly, not in secret, but loudly and deliberately throwing things into a suitcase in the bedroom while Adam stood in the doorway watching. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To my mother's house, and I will come back when you decide what kind of home you actually want to run." She left for 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks, Sandra told me, were the most miserable of Mama Adaize's life. With Vivian gone, the house was quiet again, but it was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of absence, the loud, accusing silence of a house where everything has been taken away, and all that remains is the truth about who created the emptiness. Mama Adaize sat in her parlor with no visitors because word had spread through the community about what was happening in that household. And people were uncomfortable now, uncomfortable in the way people get when they realized they had watched a woman suffer for years and called it tradition. And now the same house was on fire and they did not know whose side to stand on. She sat alone with her television and her tea, cold because there was no one to make it at 6:15.
and the full weight of what she had built in her own house began to settle on her shoulders.
She had spent years constructing a kingdom of fear. She had broken one woman's spirit slowly and carefully, convinced that domination was the same thing as respect, convinced that a daughter-in-law who endured everything was a daughter-in-law who was working correctly. She had driven away patience and kindness and genuine effort and replaced them with someone who gave back everything she sent out, multiplied. And now she was sitting in the kingdom she had built, completely alone, and it was in flames. Adam went to fetch Vivian from her mother's house after the 2 weeks. He came back alone. Vivian had told him she needed more time. What Vivian actually needed, I was told much later, was a lawyer. The divorce papers arrived at the house 4 months later. I heard about it on a Thursday evening. Sandra called, and this time she did not ask if I was sitting down. She just said it. Vivian filed for divorce. It's done. I was standing in my kitchen when she told me, stirring a pot of pepper soup for a client event the next morning. The same hands, the same pot, a completely different life. "How is Mama Daisy?" I asked. Sandra was quiet for a moment. "Jessica, she had a mild stroke last month. She is recovering, but her left side is weak. She cannot do much for herself now. The women in the church are rotating to come and help her." I set down my spoon. I felt something move through me that I could not name immediately. It was not happiness. I want to be clear about that. I took no joy in an old woman's body failing her. I am not built that way, and nothing that woman did to me changed the way I was built. What I felt was something more complicated. It was the feeling of watching a long story finally reach its true ending. The feeling of a circle completing itself, not with triumph, but with truth. She had hit me, she had humiliated me, she had used her hands as weapons and her voice as a whip, and her son's silence as permission. She had made me feel worthless in a house I cooked for, cleaned for, and gave my youth to. And now she was sitting in that same house, her body betraying her second daughter-in-law gone, her son hollowed out by choices he refused to examine, the community she had performed for finally seeing behind the curtain, and there was no one to make her tea. Not because people hated her, but because she had never once considered that the people she treated as servants might one day simply not be there. I heard through Sandra that Mama Daisy had said something in a quiet moment to one of the church women who came to help her. Said it softly, looking out the window at the compound that I used to sweep before dawn. That Jessica, she was a good girl. I did not know what I had. Those words reached me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my little apartment, the terracotta wall warm in the afternoon light, a cup of tea on the table beside me, the exact color I liked, the exact sweetness I chose, made by my own hands for no one's approval but mine. I sat with those words for a long time. She was a good girl. I did not know what I had. Not an apology, not accountability, but the truth, finally climbing out of the place she had buried it, arriving too late to change anything, just in time to confirm everything. I had tried everything to please that woman. I had woken before the sun, I had cooked until my hands cracked, I had swallowed insults and absorbed blows and bent myself into shapes that no person should have to bend into. I had loved her son faithfully and genuinely. I had treated her with more patience and dignity than she had ever shown me. And none of it was ever enough, because the problem was never my cooking, or my sweeping, or my salt, or my respect. The problem was that she had decided before I even walked through that door that I would not be enough, that I was something to be managed and diminished and controlled. And a decision like that, made by a person like that, cannot be cooked or swept or smiled away. The only answer to a door that will never open, no matter how long you knock, is to stop knocking, to turn around, and find the door that was always meant to be yours. I picked up my cup of tea. I walked to the window. I looked out on the street below. Ordinary, alive, indifferent, beautiful. And I felt something settle into my chest, like the last piece of a long puzzle clicking into place. Not triumph, not bitterness, just peace. The real kind, the deep kind, the kind that lives in the body, not just the mind. The kind that no one can slap out of your hand, drag you across a compound to undo, or turn from you by turning their back when you need them most. The kind you find only when you finally stop trying to earn it in a house that it was never going to be given. I had lost a marriage, but I had found myself. And on the scale of things that matter, there was no comparison. Some battles are not meant to be won by trying harder. Some are won by finally knowing when to walk away. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.